As the year is almost over, I thought why not make a list of games that made it memorable. I know that this year was not as good as the previous one, where we got really spoiled, but it still had some bangers, and narrowing down the list to just 15 was nearly impossible. So I'm sorry if I didn't include your favorite game on the list. Let me know in the comments which game should have definitely been on the video, and maybe I might make a whole new list. I will not be including Shadow of the Erdtree and other remakes, as although some of them were absolutely amazing like Silent Hill 2, they were still remakes, and giving them the spotlight over some of the great games that came out this year in such a condensed list does not feel right. So here are my top 15 best games of the year. Prince of Persia is a classic series of games, and it's the main reason why we have the Assassin's Creed games. Although Prince of Persia Lost Crown is not the same as any of those titles, it's a really fun platformer game developed by Ubisoft. The combat in the game, the puzzles, and the maps are really great. Although it started with a pretty controversial opening with the company's shady record and many other factors, the game itself turned out to be an instant classic. From the great combat system to excellent level design and platforming mechanics, I had a lot of fun playing this game. Unfortunately, because of its commercial failure, I don't think Ubisoft will be releasing a sequel. But I love that they try out something new with this game instead of making the same open world games that they've been making year after year. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is a great refreshing take on the overly saturated market of open world games. It's not something that revolutionized the gaming industry, but having a brutal world where the game heavily tests the player's mechanics is great fun. The survival horror genre is slowly fading away, with each year having fewer and fewer games that delve into this harsh market. Stalker 2 is the sequel to the famous Stalker games, and GSC World did a great job with this one. It's a first-person shooter game that definitely doesn't hold the player's hand. While a lot of the time in the late game, the player just phase through everything that the game throws at them in a survival game. This game will eat you alive if you try to do that. The player will actually need to survive in this brutal world, and I love that. It had its fair share of problems during launch, with the performance being the biggest factor of it not being one of the biggest sellers. But with all the patches and updates, they have made the game much better. I hope they keep on improving it and make it a game that everyone would want to play someday. Satisfactory was one of the games that I didn't expect to pop off so much. I love that indie games are becoming such fan favorites every passing year. The player is dropped off on an unknown planet and he or she has to gather natural resources to build complex factories. The premise of the game is really simple, and it's because of this simplicity that it works so well. It spent most of its lifetime in early access for about 5 years, and within that time, Coffee Stain Studios learned a lot about what the players wanted and perfected the nitty-gritties of the game and made it super addictive. I remember thinking of only playing for an hour, but ended up playing several. Its smooth gameplay loop, its environments, its stunning art style, all combined to be one of the best indie games of the year. This is a great example that games and studios do not need to revolutionize the industry. Instead, they can just take inspiration from the thousands of good games out there and make something incredible and something that you yourself would want to play. I highly recommend this game to everyone. Dragon's Dogma 2 might be a controversial one here, but I think it deserves its spot. It was such a good game and had something new to offer in the overly saturated fantasy world genre. The game definitely had its issues. I don't want to get into the controversies outside of the game, but inside, it ran very poorly when it was launched. Even after many updates, the game is still not perfect, but it has many other redeeming qualities that make it deserving a spot on the list. I know I've said this for many of the games, but the environment they created for Dragon's Dogma 2 is truly great, and it had to be that way, because there is no fast travel for the game. You can use artifacts that can teleport you from one location to another, but those are not unlimited. The game had me hooked on the character creation system itself. All the crazy ways you could customize your character adds to the immersiveness nature of the game. The combat mechanics and the companion systems are also something that this game can be proud of. This game has its rough edges, but it's a terrific game nonetheless. The popularity of Like a Dragon series has been growing a lot during the last few years, and I can see why. They make some truly unique games which are really fun to play. With the new installment in the series, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth boosted its fandom to a whole new level, and it's easy to see why. It took the turn-based combat mechanics from the previous games and improved upon it. It has some of the best characters in any game, and it's filled with side content and minigames. From Pokemon-inspired minigames to Crazy Taxi to even Animal Crossing minigames, it has it all. This is the area it looks like the studio focused most of their time, as the core gameplay was already great with the previous titles. All of this combined with the great setting of Hawaii, its first overseas settings by the way, and vibrant world building, you've got one of the best Like a Dragon games out there. For anyone wanting to try out the series, this game is a great one. Also, I would suggest you to try it out fast because the studio finally announced a new IP with Project Century, which should be a good one as well. We don't have much information about it, and it might still have a year or two in its development cycle, but I'm really excited for it. Legend of Zelda has always been and will always be one of the best games to come out from Nintendo, but throughout its long-standing history, we the gamers were never really given the option to play as Zelda herself. So with this game, you could see how happy gamers were to finally play as her. It was her time to save Link, with the Tri-Rod in hand, a magical artifact given to her by the fairy Tri, who assists her along her journey. Zelda traverses through Hyrule to save the kingdom and also Link. This game not only delivers on the choice of character, but also the gameplay as well. Being a 2D sandbox type game, it has some pretty cool and fun new mechanics that keeps us engaged throughout the whole journey. From the combat to the exploration, it feels like a fresh new game, but it still keeps the core Zelda experience. As simple as it sounds, it was tough to pull off, but the developers did a fantastic job. It has a similar visual style as that of the remake of Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, which was developed by Nintendo and Grezzo as well. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was making waves in the community even before it was released. It was the most hyped fighting game ever, and the data showed the same as people were pre-ordering it everywhere. They were waiting for years for a new game in the Budokai Tenkaichi series, and when Bandai Namco finally released the game this year, people loved it. The game was so great that it got me playing many other fighting games as well. While I'm not really into this genre very much, Dragon Ball Sparkling Zero was one of my favorites right from the start. With all my favorite characters in the game and many others that I didn't know even existed, it was a great experience playing it. It was like a dream come true for all the Dragon Ball fans. With the stunning visuals and the smooth fighting mechanics, the game definitely deserves some credit. Warhammer 40k brings back the old nostalgic era of gaming where the player only cared about hacking and slashing away their weapons, killing hordes of monsters. This game has all that and more. The previous titles had a cult-like following, and so the devs had a lot of pressure to make it just right. Arriving almost a decade later after the previous title, this game delivers on all fronts. The combat of this game feels like this is what gaming should have been like. There are no hidden agendas or meaning behind the characters or the setting, no ulterior motives and or reason as to why particular things were created. They just made something that would look and feel totally awesome and pump up the adrenaline inside all gamers. I always wanted to play a little more every time I booted up this game, and that feeling never really left until the very end. Be it co-op or a one-man show, this game will keep you engaged for a long time. But be careful as the harder difficulties are very unforgiving. You would have to use everything in your arsenal and then some to survive the massive armies of monsters that come at you one after the other. It's crazy to think that Helldivers 2 was released this year. It definitely feels like I've been playing it for years now. It deserves a spot among the best games this year. During its launch, people were going crazy about how good this game was, and because of that, it was a worldwide success almost instantly. No one thought that it would become this big, not even Sony. Now this game, as most of the others on this list, was no stranger to controversy. With all the PSN account linking fiasco that went on, people got really mad at Sony, and there was a massive crowd that wanted to straight out refund the game. Even despite that, the game continues to grow and still receives support for its massive player base that still play the game. If you could overlook the PSN stuff, I'm sure you would have a lot of fun diving into different planets, surviving and killing monsters. If not, it's understandable, but the game still deserves to be on this list simply because it was one of the best survival shooter games out there. It dared to make something that no one really had done before, taking a huge risk. But in the end, it paid off and it became a game that many would talk about for months to come. Stellar Blade was one of my personal favorites this year. I don't know why people hated this game. The characters were on the edgy side, but that's just the game. Regardless of the controversies, it was a great action-adventure game developed by Shift Up. Although the company has made a few games before, none of them made it big in the Western market. But everything changed with Stellar Blade. The people who were not offended by the video game characters really enjoyed it. The environment was good, the boss battles were great, and the combat was amazing. I believe that if people gave it a chance, they would have really liked it and would have been recognized more among the gaming community as one of the best games to come out in 2024. I can only think of one other game that was better in the same genre as Stellar Blade this year. I, as well as many others, thought that this game was made as a fan service, typical low-quality Souls-like game. But it turned out that it was a fan service, high-quality Souls-like game that you would have a lot of fun roaming around. Astrobot won the Game of the Year this year. While many people did not agree with the decisions, that includes me as well, we can't deny that it's a really good game. After many small releases like Astrobot Playroom, this year Sony finally decided to make a full-scale game out of its playful mascot, and we couldn't be happier. The playful robot, embarked on a journey to save other bots, is a joy to play, and being a 3D platformer, it's a pretty chill one too. I don't even remember how many hours I've wasted on this game exploring the brilliant and vibrant world. It can be considered among some of the modern classics like Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario 3D World. It's not surprising given how much effort they have put into this. It runs like the PS5 was made for this game instead of the other way around. The environment and the objects looks beautiful and colorful, and even the combat looks seamless. Anyone who has played it will tell you how incredibly smooth this game runs on the PS5. Combined with all the innovative and fun ideas they implemented with this game, made it so popular among the community. No one will say that it's a bad game, just that it was not worthy of the Game of the Year. But it does not matter, as for gamers, a good game is all we need. Whether it won a fancy title has no significance. Balatro is a game that many didn't even know existed until its release, made by just one guy who thought, why not make a card game that's actually fun and might make people come back to it time after time again. And that's exactly what he did. The roguelike genre's popularity has been on a rise lately, mostly because games like PokeRogue popularized the concept that you can make anything into a roguelike and have tons of fun with it. But this guy went one step further and made card games roguelike. Who would have thought that this was even possible? But this guy did, and it worked fabulously. The amount of thought and ingenuity that must have went into making this game must have been so high. And that's what I love about indie games, that they don't have to play it safe. They take risks and innovate. They are the one that makes the cool things nowadays. Gone are the days where we had to rely on Bethesda or Ubisoft to make fun, exciting ones. If a single guy could make such a fantastic game, I'm sure smaller studios would come up and show us what we were missing all these years. Who knew collecting cards and building decks would be so much fun? Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 had a lot of potential. It showed us what Unreal Engine 5 could do when pushed to its limits, with the incredible showcase of how in real time it could map facial expressions onto the video game characters to the stunning, absolutely mind-blowing visuals. This game pushed the boundaries of the engine, but it came at the price of performance. Even PCs with high-end hardware, I'm talking about the 3080s, were facing massive frame drops. Although the first game was very well received, this game had a mixed reception. People loved the environment and the graphics, but the story on the other hand left something to be desired. I felt like if the core gameplay mechanics, like the combat, was improved a bit, it could have been such a better game. Graphics wise, I doubt there is another game out there that could compete with it. They focus so much more on the tech to develop the side stuff that they left out some of the good things that this game built up with the previous title. That being said, the game is still very good. If you like realism and games where you can forget everything and just enjoy the scene, then this game will be everything you need. But because of some of its flaws, it's unfortunately in the honorable mention section. Once Human tried out a lot of new things with the game and it all seemed to work really well with each other. It takes a lot to stand out in the survival genre, given that there are hundreds of thousands of games that get released every single year. But this game had a few things that made it stand out from the rest. It definitely had its issues, but if the developers keep on building on its post-apocalyptic base building survivor horror game like they have been, this might become something that could surprise a lot of people. Its monster design and environment choices are the ones that made me play this game, and I don't regret it a single bit. It needs a little bit of polishing, a bit more of a storyline, and some cool things to do. But if it's done right, I can only see it going up from here. The original Frostpunk is a modern classic and a fan favorite at that. So when the sequel was announced, people were really excited and the game delivered. Frostpunk 2 is yet another brutal survival city building game developed by 11-bit studios. It throws the player into a post-apocalyptic environment where the whole world is struggling to survive, and the player, being the leader, has to make some choices in order for the people to survive the harsh conditions. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, and being a city building game, it's not for those who lack patience. But it's a mechanically rich game where you need to make impossible decisions. It builds on the foundations of the original game in all the right ways possible. A team of 70 people made this game, and while the first game was more about surviving the apocalypse, this game focuses more on building a big and prosperous metropolis. Apart from the main storyline, there is also a sandbox mode where players can focus more creating large colonies, stockpiling resources, and more. The developers say that this mode will have more replayability than the story mode itself. So if you haven't tried it, I would recommend checking it out. I was wishing that the new Indiana Jones game would be amazing, because the last few movies and games have spoiled the name of the iconic character a bit. There was quite a few doubts about the direction Machine Games took with this game prior to its release. One of the major ones being, why is the game in first-person mode? Why did they not remake the game just like Uncharted? But after the release of the game, those doubts were soon removed as it captured the tone and vibes of the movies pretty accurately. It even put the last few Indiana Jones movies to shame with its stunning direction. The game's stealth mechanics works like it was intended to, meaning you can work the system to benefit your gameplay. It may not be realistic, but it's a game. It's not supposed to be realistic. They also recreated the setting of 1900s Egypt. The combat mechanics are not what you would expect, and it adds to the charm of the game. The game is jam-packed with actions and puzzles that will keep you engaged throughout the whole playthrough. Visually, it's one of the best ones out there. But you will need a 4090 to experience the full quality of the environment, and even then you will need DLSS to run the game at 4K Ultra. Despite that, the game itself is a masterpiece. Shame that it was released just outside the window for it to be considered for the Game of the Year this year. It definitely deserves a spot on the top 3 of the list. This is where I debated for a long time, and honestly, I won't mind if you switch the top 2. Both of them were the best games of the year this year, in my opinion, and I decided to go with Metaphor ReFantazio as my number 2. While there were many who did not like the graphics of the game, but it's a design choice that they went with, and frankly, it works with the game. Its fantastic turn-based combat adds more to the engagement of the game. It was first announced way back in 2016, and since then, they kept it quiet and under the radar until 2023. They kept on working in silence and finally released this masterpiece in 2024. If you're looking for a game to take you away from the harsh reality and immerse you in the fantasy world with over 100 hours of gameplay, then look no further than Metaphor ReFantazio. Set in the medieval fantasy realm of the United Kingdom, this game will take you on a journey to become the next prince. The story involves many political battles with plenty of lies and is quite dark and does not pull any punches. It will surely give you a great time. Oh, and before I reveal the final game on the list, I have to say that this game's soundtrack was one of the best ones I've heard this year. Our final game on the list is Black Myth: Wukong. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed playing this game. Set in ancient China, we play as the Monkey King Wukong himself when he lost his powers. The iconic character that inspired many fictional characters, such as Son Goku himself. The fun, Souls-like combat style, and with the exciting story, it takes you on a journey like nothing else. Many people had their eyes on this game mainly because of a gameplay reveal that they made to attract investors. They showed the trailer, showcasing how good the game looked and what we could expect. The epic boss battles are the main focus of the game, and this game has a lot of them. Exploration does reward you with not only loot, but also whole new areas with more epic bosses that otherwise you won't even notice would be there. The game is full of surprises and innovation. Right from the first scene, we could see the scale at which Game Science was working with, reliving the past and fighting the same enemies as that of the original Monkey King. Sun Wukong was a blast, and I hope that they keep scaling it for the next 2 games in the series. Yes, Black Myth: Wukong was the first in the Black Myth trilogy. Looking at the game, we won't even notice that it's Game Science's first full-scale console game. While people thought that this game would be good if they made the game as they promised, no one even thought the level of success they would get after its release. The first game from a Chinese company to be nominated for Game of the Year even after all the controversies surrounding it. And there you have it, top 15 games released in 2024. This year we had a lot of good games. I would agree that previous year we were spoiled with a plethora of great games. This year was almost the same as well. It's just that some of the good ones were not from the biggest gaming studios out there. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this list? Did you like it? Or do you have any other games you would want in here? If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to watch some of the worst games of 2024, I have a video here as well. So if you want to avoid spending your hard-earned money on these games, have a look. See you in the next one.